Rafuse, and this is Spark, the Upper Valley's arts and culture program here on CATV. On this episode of Spark, I am delighted to have members of the production team for Deployed, a new play by Nicola and Samantha Lazar. This play explores the female experience in the military. Now, I serve as co-producer and director for this show, so I'm especially excited to introduce it to Spark audiences. We've got not only the creators, Sam and Nicola, but also Sarah Bonson from the White River Junction Veterans Association Medical Center, and actress Kitchell, who you may remember from a previous episode of Spark, as well as a couple of short pieces from the play performed by actresses Noelle, Franco, and Meredith. But first, just a little bit about this play, which was conceived, created, and developed right here in the Upper Valley. Deployed arose from interviews with female veterans conducted by Nicola in Vermont and New Hampshire. These brave women are ranging in age and backgrounds, and they served in a variety of U.S. military branches, both in peacetime as well as during the Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq wars. Deployed was developed under the aegis of Northern Stage in White River Junction, Vermont, and the creation period culminated in 2 public readings back in 2019, one at the VA Center and one at Northern Stage. And now Deployed is hitting the road. We're planning to tour this play to military establishments, academies, VAs, bases, and performing arts venues across the Upper New England area in the spring of 2022. So today, I am absolutely thrilled to speak with those most intimate with the play. We'll talk about the impetus, the process, and the impact that Deployed has already created and our hopes for its future. Joining me now are co-creators Nicola and Samantha Lazar. Welcome, ladies, to Spark.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you very much for having us on to talk about the play.
Absolutely. So Nicola, I'm actually going to start with you. You know, you were a journalist by trade, worked for the Valley News for years. Tell me about why you decided to write this play and just a little bit about the creation process.
Well, I had written a story for the Valley News in 2015 about a book club for female veterans at the White River Junction VA. I sat in maybe 2 or 3 sessions, and I was really struck by the intensity and the candor with which the women in the book club talked about their experiences in the military. I thought their stories were really incredible. I hadn't really heard anything like that before, and I thought, well, if I haven't heard them, then my guess is the general public may not have heard them either. Right. So I had the idea to interview them and turn that into a piece of documentary theater. And one of the things that struck me was that the women in the book club, no matter what their experience, felt that their contributions were overlooked or unknown. And all of this started to happen at about the same time that the Me Too movement was thrust into the national spotlight. And as it happened, the women I interviewed had quite a lot of experience with sexism, harassment, and in some cases, sexual assault.
And just specifically, Nicola, the idea, you know, you could have written a book with these stories, or what is it about a play that felt particularly important for Deployed?
Well, I was really entranced by the way the women told their stories. They were very reflective, very thoughtful. They clearly, whether they realized it or not, or were intentional about it, had shaped their experiences into a narrative. And to me, there was a real power in the sound of the human voice. And there's an intimacy in a darkened theater or a darkened room you're not going to get from Netflix. You can't press pause on a remote control in the theater. You don't shut the book and walk away. You sit and you listen. And one thing I realized through my work and working with these women was that listening is very active. It's not a passive experience. And for me, that's why I thought theater would serve the stories well. And I think the the readings we did bore that out. So I'm excited to continue with the project.
That's brilliant. And Sam, just turning it over to you, you came into the process to help Nicola kind of shape these stories into a play. Can you just talk a little bit about some of the issues and some of the stories that audiences will hear when they go to see Deployed?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's really such a wide range of topics that these stories address. There's some really surprising humor that you might not expect in a play with such weighty themes. It's really the full tapestry of human experiences. There's a lot of compassion that we feel from the women for each other. And I think that's elicited from the audience as well. And that's really a result of, putting these stories. We took these verbatim interviews, but we kind of wove them together and put them in dialogue, put the characters in dialogue with each other. Each woman is kind of telling her own story, but, responding to similar experiences that other women have had and kind of, speaking to each other as they do it. So, the stories illuminate this wide range of experiences from sexual harassment, like Nicola mentioned, and pride of service, to returning home and what it's like for women to come back home and kind of melt into the rest of society, sometimes in a way that feels invisible. I'd love to share a clip.
Yeah.
If we can, to give an example of, one of these stories, one of these young women talking about these complex issues. So this first clip is an actress named Noelle Franco, and she's performing a piece of what Kelly, the character, says. Kelly is a young vet from LA.
Excellent. And with that, here's Noelle Franco playing Kelly from Deployed.
Where we're from in LA, the military is pretty much the only ticket out. It's one of those areas where if you don't leave, you're going to be stuck there. I told myself I'm going to leave and never come back. My siblings always saw me as a sissy. They told me I couldn't join the Marines. Oh, because I'm a girl, I can't do this? I like to prove people wrong. On the first day, everybody's in there crying. They missed home, it was just different. And I was wondering, why are you crying? You knew what you were getting yourself into. Basic training was easier than I expected. Being treated like dirt was really motivating. I was happy that I actually had purpose. I always liked the sense of being a part of something bigger than myself. And when you march in formation, you really feel that you're part of a movement. You're all moving the same, but you're still an individual. But it wasn't all roses. Basically, the females, you're either told you're a lesbian or a whore, and I was not a lesbian and I was not a whore, but this is the issue that a lot of women go in with, that reputation, even though they had nothing to do with it. We were really treated differently. We had to do things that we shouldn't have had to do. One officer made me come into his office and turn around slowly in front of him. He wanted to spank us. He wanted to see us in bikinis. My daughter, she's 8 now, she says she wants to be a Marine. And I'm not going to discourage it because I'd be really proud of her. 90% of my friends are Marines. That's all she's ever known. That's all she's used to. But I want to make sure that I teach my daughter what's wrong and what's right, so that what I experienced doesn't happen to her.
So here to talk about her experience with Deployed is the fantastic Katie Kitchell, who you may remember from a previous episode of Spark. She played Jane in the 2019 readings of Deployed. Katie, welcome back to Spark, this time with your actress hat on.
Thanks for having me.
So you've been such an important part of this production, and I know that it really has resonated with you over the last couple of years. So I'm just wondering if you can tell us a little bit about how the experience of working on this play changed you.
Well, you know, Amanda, I could probably talk about this for hours. It really has changed me, it impacted me. When you have the opportunity to, as an actor, to get to know a character, some of those characters you meet and then you say goodbye to and they go away, but others stay with you for a really long time. And Jane is someone who has stayed with me over the past couple of years, and I find myself coming back to her and thinking about her often. And I think part of that is because of what you said, that during our rehearsal process, we spent a long time looking at what it means to be in the military, listening to these words that the women actually said. These are real words that service women said. And spending time thinking about what that meant for us as civilians and also for them as service women. And there are four major ways that I feel that this has impacted me. And the first is that getting to know Jane and listening to these stories challenged, they gave me new perspective. I found that I used to think about the military from one perspective. If you think of a statue, I was looking at the statue from the front. And during this process, I was encouraged to walk around the statue and look at it from all different sides. And as I did that, I recognized the second thing is that I had made some assumptions about what it meant to be in the military and to serve. And those assumptions were important to challenge and consider. The third thing then that led me to consider our seeds of compassion. They planted seeds of compassion for me. And so, for example, I could say that by working with the military consultants, I understood from a new perspective what it meant to serve, that there are doors that are opened for people through education and through career training. In terms of assumption, I think that I'd always looked at the military from a militaristic perspective, a war perspective, and I hadn't considered some of the other ways in which the military affects people. The third, so the compassion though, when I was thinking about the stories, each one of these women shared stories of trauma. And the trauma was perhaps in a traditional sense of being on the front lines and seeing battle, watching people die, having to attend to wounded women and men. But also some of this trauma happened from within the core of their friends or colleagues in experiencing sexual harassment or even sexual assault. And every single one of the women spoke about those experiences, but they also spoke about pride of service and the honor of serving. And that was an equal importance. So they were speaking about what it meant to protect the United States, to protect citizens, to be in service of democracy, to look at the flag and have it mean something beyond a symbol for them. And so those two pieces of the trauma as well as the pride were connected in every single story that was shared on that stage. And I was struck by that, and it got me thinking. When I listen to stories on National Public Radio, I think about them in a different way. I have a deeper level of compassion and understanding. And that drew me to the fourth part of this learning that I had, which is about connection, and that these stories connect us, not just connecting civilians to understanding what service is the experience of service is for service women, but also connecting servicemen and service women. And even most importantly, connecting service women to each other, to know that they are not alone in this duality, in this yin and yang that they're experiencing through their service. And that was incredibly important to me.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Katie, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, your experience, your talent, and just all of your wonderful humanity and compassion with this project, but also with all of our viewers. We're so grateful to have you. So here we are. I'm really, really, really delighted to welcome to the show Sarah Bonson. She's been absolutely instrumental to the creation and success of Deployed. She's been a close collaborator on behalf of the White River Junction Veterans Administration Medical Center, and specifically the Women Veterans Program. The program that Sarah works with is specifically designed to meet the unique needs of female veterans with mental and physical health services, community support, and engagement activities such as running that book club that Nicola mentioned. Sarah, we are so grateful for you and all you do. Welcome to Spark.
Thanks so much for having me, Amanda.
So just tell me a little bit about what excited you about this project. When you were approached about it, why did you decide to say yes?
Oh, well, how could I say no, really? It's such a wonderful idea, and it was such an exciting project to learn about, number one. And I had not really heard about anything happening like this previous to the project being brought to me. One of the things that art can do really well is to illuminate things in a different way, or help people to think about things in a way that they haven't necessarily thought about them before. And when a lot of people think about service members, they don't necessarily think about women when they think about military service. And so the Deployed project really helps to bring women's service to the forefront, and highlights the service of not only individual women, but women as a whole, and helps to depict individual women's experiences in such a way that you get to meet individual women on stage, and they tell you their story. It was a joy to watch, and a joy to be able to bring that experience to our veteran community, but also our community at large, to be able to help people see that women have served too.
Excellent. Yes. Yeah. I love that idea of illuminating and hearing each other's stories. What kind of change or impact would you hope to see from stories like this being illuminated for both the public and for military personnel?
So one of the things that I think stories like this can help bring to the forefront for people is that women have individual experiences while they're in the service, and they're deserving of recognition for their service after their discharge. I can't tell you how many times I hear stories from women who have served that have veteran plates and go to the grocery store with their husband or a friend who is male, and the male partner that they're with gets a thank you for your service, and has to step back and say, actually, I'm not the one who served. My wife or my friend here is the one who served. You should be thanking her. And so with stories like this, and being able to introduce these women's stories to the public, it is hope that women will be recognized for their service and their contributions.
Awesome. Yeah, we should get all those men t-shirts that say, I'm with her.
Right, exactly.
And I guess just finally, I'm wondering why you think, you mentioned a little bit about how a play can sort of create a space for people to listen and to hear, but what are some of the responses that you heard from audience members at the reading? What were they taking in for themselves?
You know, the responses to the play were actually overwhelmingly positive, and there's a couple of things that I think are worth noting. First, I had the pleasure to actually meet a few of the women who volunteered their stories for depiction within the play. And for them, seeing their stories come to life in a way that shared them with the general public was extremely validating. And so getting that their story out there in a way that was also very safe for them. They didn't have to share their story with the public, but the public actually heard about their experience, and was able to see and to feel that in the way that is generated by the play, was very validating and actually very healing for a lot of the women who had some negative experiences. Kind of brought that to almost some closure for them. And then the other thing that I think is worth noting is that for women who were viewing the play and had served in military service, while they might not be able to identify with every single aspect of every single woman's story, they were able to pull out pieces that really fit with their experience and that they really identified with. And there was something validating for them in that experience, and knowing that other people kind of get it now that they've seen this play. Overall, it was a wonderful opportunity for everybody that was involved, I think.
Well, and I will say too, I remember having a couple conversations with male veterans and them saying, you know, my sergeant was a female, or my commanding officer was a female, and I'm so glad that these stories are out there because she was amazing. So that support from veterans, whether they're male or female, is exciting. It's exciting to see. Well, Sarah, I can't thank you enough for sharing your time, your energy, your passionate advocacy for female veterans, and I thank you for your service, for all that you do. You're an incredible person, and I'm just so glad to have gotten to know you through this project.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for involving me and for letting me be a part of the project. It's been a wonderful experience, and I wish nothing but bigger and better audiences for this play.
Thank you. Your mouth is God's ears. So we're actually going to jump right into another clip from Deployed, and in this you will be seeing Kim Meredith, who is portraying Kathy, a nurse, and her experiences with some of the very difficult and challenging moments where she was supporting soldiers during various wars. Here's that clip.
When I hear choppers, I remember. When you're close to choppers, you can feel them in your chest. I'll never forget a man who came into the unit with white phosphorus shrapnel in his eye. They had to pull it out carefully and then immediately shove it into a bucket of wet sand so it didn't combust. It would just burst into flames as soon as it hit oxygen. It was like having a grenade inside you. The hardest thing for me was identifying with the mental anguish that the men, kids really, were going through. Burns were the hardest because you feel it. You feel it from the patient. You'd get on duty, and I go around and find gauzes with fingers and toes and noses and ear tips, and I attached to them. There was one patient I always think about, Greg. He was from San Diego, and he was a football player. Greg was probably the worst case we ever went through. His chopper had been shot down, and he'd been handsome, like a tab hunter type. Tan, blonde, well-built. I saw a picture. He was so badly burned. He couldn't talk, he couldn't eat or drink, he couldn't move. So I'd sit and tell him stories, anything to try to keep his mind off what he was going through. Every morning we'd go in and say, "Is Greg still alive?" Hoping that finally he passed and his suffering would be over. He lived for 3 months that way. 3 months. People would ask me, Kathy, how could you work there? How could you do it? How could I not do it? I gave it everything I was and everything I had.
And now here we are back with our playwrights, Sam and Nicola. Ladies, we've learned a lot about Deployed, its inception, its impact, heard a couple of clips. To close the show out, I would just love to hear from both of you about what you hope to achieve with Deployed now and in the future. Sam, you wanna lead us off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the main thing is that we just want to share these stories more widely. We want to illuminate these experiences, the experiences of female veterans that most civilians are, totally unaware of.
After the first two readings, a number of people said, what are you going to do with this? This really needs to get out there. People want to hear these stories and see these women on stage. So we've been working on a tour of northern New England, which will go to some VA medical centers, some theaters, and any other venues that would be interested in having us. And it's, I think, I'm not a theater person the way you are, Amanda, but I think because it is just women on stage without costumes, without sets, the play is very portable, mobile. It can be moved from one venue to the other with ease. It's 70 minutes long without an intermission, so it's not, it's not like going to a Wagnerian opera or anything like that. And we have 7 women on stage, all very talented actors. So yeah. I'm hoping once we do Northern New England that we could take it to New York or Washington, D.C. Well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as Nicola said, the details are still being solidified for our spring tour, but we're expecting to be at the Lebanon Opera House, and that's in collaboration with the White River VA. We plan to be at the Flynn Center in Burlington. We have an ongoing relationship with Norwich University. We've been talking to 2 VAs in the Boston area, a theater and a VA in upstate New York. So we're really, getting around our broad region. We're hoping for 10 to 12 venues for this tour. And then, hopefully after that, we'll see in what ways we can kind of adjust the play or tweak the tour experience and maybe reach out, to an even broader audience nationally. There has been interest.
Well, ladies, I am so grateful to you for your incredible work on this play, for illuminating these stories, for bringing them out into the world. Thank you for that and for sharing your experiences with our viewing audience here at Spark. And of course, I'm also grateful to Sarah and to Katie for sharing their experiences, and the talented Noelle and Kim. I just want to point out with pride that this play was conceived by women. The stories were shared by women. The production team is all female, as is the cast, which is really extraordinary. I also want to take a moment to thank the collaborators who've already contributed to Deployed, especially the White River Junction Veterans Medical Center, the Women's Veteran Program there, Northern Stage, the Lebanon Opera House, who serves as a fiscal sponsor for Deployed, and of course, the fantastic actresses, stage managers who've been a part of the development process. And of course, the funders. We are still seeking funding to get the spring tour off the ground, but we've received such incredible support from the Byrne Foundation, the Couch Family Foundation, the Hope Foundation, Mascoma Foundation, Northern Stages Bold Ventures, as well as the Vermont Humanities and Arts Councils. It's just amazing how every person or organization that we've reached out to talk about this has just been enthusiastically supportive. Again, ladies, thank you so much for being on Spark. And I want to tell our audiences, if they're interested in learning more or supporting this project, you can visit nicolasmith.org/deployed, and you'll find out a lot more about it, how to support the spring tour. And we absolutely welcome any ideas or connections that you may have in order for us to get the word out about this play and to bring it to civilian and military audiences. You can contact the production team at DeployedThePlay@gmail.com. That's it for this episode of Spark. You've been watching it here on CATV.